ago, Luke knew motivate story.
The spark that wasn't. The alarm buzzed at 4:45 a.m., vibrating against the cheap nightstand like it was angry to be awake. James smacked it with a groan. The room was cold, dark, silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator 2 rooms away. He stared at the ceiling, the same way he had for the past 2 months, every morning. He had promised himself he'd change his life. New year, new man. Morning runs. Healthy eating. No more drinking. No more scrolling endlessly through apps that drained his time and inflated his anxiety. He needed to become someone else. Someone stronger, sharper, better. But this morning, like so many before, the warmth of the blanket felt more convincing than his goals. The gym clothes were folded neatly on the chair. His running shoes were lined up like obedient soldiers. Everything was in place, except for the spark. "I just don't feel motivated," he whispered to no one, eyes still glued to the ceiling. And that was the problem. James had always been told that motivation was the key, that he just had to wait for it. Videos, podcasts, books, they all promised that the right combination of words would awaken something inside him, that he'd leap out of bed, eyes blazing, ready to conquer the world. But it never came, until one morning, he got tired of waiting. No lightning bolt, no music swelling in the background, just a thought, small but sharp. What if motivation isn't the beginning? What if it's the result? He didn't know where the idea came from. Some half-remembered quote from a podcast, maybe. Something about ancient philosophers. Stoics. Men who trained their minds like warriors trained their bodies. That morning, he didn't bounce out of bed. He rolled. Slowly. Miserably. Pulled on the cold gym clothes. Laced up the shoes. He didn't run fast. He didn't run far. But he ran. That was the beginning. Not of a transformation, but of a practice. The next few weeks were a grind. James began waking at 4:45 every morning, not because he felt inspired, but because he'd decided that the feeling didn't matter. He scribbled a quote on a yellow sticky note and stuck it to his mirror. Discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. The first week, he hated it. Every run was cold. Every morning felt stolen from sleep. He didn't feel motivated. He felt tired, achy, frustrated. But every day, he did the work. He added simple routines. 10 push-ups before his shower, no phone after 9 p.m., water before coffee. He tracked it with pen and paper. No apps. No dopamine-charged gamification. Just old-school discipline. At first, it was mechanical, robotic, something he forced himself to do. But then, around week 3, something odd happened. On a Thursday, running under a still purple sky, he caught himself smiling. Not because of the sunrise, not because of a runner's high, but because he was starting to like the feeling of keeping a promise to himself. That smile wasn't motivation. It was pride, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't shout, but stays with you. On a Sunday afternoon, James found himself reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius in a cafe near his apartment. He didn't even know why he picked it up, maybe because he'd heard the name on a podcast, or maybe because the bookstore had it on a table labeled for the thinking man. He read, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of? If I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do." James laughed out loud. It was as if the Roman emperor had watched him flail in bed every morning and decided to write him a note, 2,000 years in advance. The Stoics didn't wait to feel like it. They trained their minds the same way soldiers train with swords. Life, they believed, wasn't about comfort. It was about clarity, doing what was right, whether or not it was easy, whether or not it was fun. James realized he had spent most of his life thinking motivation was a gift, a spark, a sudden thunderclap from the sky. But the Stoics knew better. Motivation was a muscle. It had to be trained. It had to be broken down, rebuilt, and repeated until it became strong enough to carry you through the hard days. That night, James made a choice. He would stop chasing feelings and start building habits. Not because he felt ready, but because he was done waiting. March rolled in with sleet and unkind winds. The kind that slapped your face and asked why the hell you were outside running before sunrise. James still didn't love those mornings, but he showed up anyway. Because the truth was sinking in. You don't rise to the level of your motivation. You fall to the level of your systems. And his system, though simple, was holding. Every morning, wake up, Feet hit the floor, gym clothes on, run. Every night. Stretch, journal one sentence, no phone past 9. Brick by brick, James was building something. Not just a better routine, but a different relationship with himself. He no longer bargained with his goals. He didn't ask himself if he felt like it. That question had been fired months ago. He had stopped romanticizing the idea of being driven and started becoming consistent instead. At work, his coworkers started noticing. Dude, how do you have this much energy at 8 a.m.? You training for something? James would just shrug. Just showing up, he'd say. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was training for life. And training didn't need a race at the end of it to matter. Discipline, however, is not a suit of armor. It's a habit, and habits can bend. April came with one of those weeks that hits harder than expected. A surprise project at work. 3 deadlines moved up. His manager dumped a crisis in his lap. His sleep dropped. He missed 2 runs in a row. Then 3. One night, half conscious, he scrolled his phone until 1 a.m. The next morning, he slept through his alarm. It spiraled. The voice returned. The familiar one. The one that whispered, "See? Knew you couldn't keep it up." Just like every other time. But this time, he did something different. Instead of letting the voice take over, he stood in front of the mirror, hair a mess, eyes red, and stared at that yellow sticky note still clinging to the glass. Discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. He read it 5 times. Then he went for a run. Slow, short, sloppy, but it wasn't about the speed. It was about reclaiming the pattern, reasserting control. He wasn't starting from scratch anymore. He was starting from experience. That run didn't feel good. It wasn't cathartic. But afterward, in the shower, he realized something. Motivation had returned. Not because he waited for it, but because he had earned it. By June, James had more discipline than he'd ever thought possible. He was eating better, sleeping better, thinking sharper. Even his therapist noticed a shift, not just in his tone, but in his language. He no longer said, "I hope I can." He said, "I will." But like all climbers, he eventually met the cliff. It came in the form of a phone call. His father had a stroke. ICU. Distant city. James packed fast, flew out. Hospitals. Fluorescent lights. Beeping monitors. Nurses who spoke in soft, grim tones. Everything stopped. No runs. No routines. Just coffee in waiting rooms and prayers whispered in antiseptic hallways. For 2 weeks, James was back in his old world, exhausted, reactive, anxious. He felt like he had lost everything he'd built. But he hadn't, because discipline doesn't disappear. It waits. The first morning after he returned home, suitcase still unpacked, James woke up early. Not because of motivation, but because habit had rewired his default. He laced up his shoes. He ran in the rain. And with every soaked step, he realized, even when life throws you off the path, discipline leaves footprints. All you have to do is follow them back.